Okay.
Hey guys, I'm Jason Honea. I am Boy True. I am the Shady Listener, and this is Radio on Berlin, an installment of our Radio on Berlin History Walks. You guys are our gentle guests.
Hello. We are here at Zietenplatz, bordering on...
Who are you?
Yeah, I'll tell you. On the Wilhelmplatz, and we are going to do Hitler's Walk, and you will hear that in the coming 10, 15, 30, 60, 90 minutes. I'm here with Jason Honea, and my name is Rinus Van Alebeek. Adrian Shephard is doing the recordings, and later on it will be all edited and cut up for your listening pleasure.
Okay. Bam! I'm so happy. You guys, my favorite Swede is here. Okay, cool. Okay.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about the idea of this walk. I'm going to do a very lengthy introduction so that you know where we actually are. And because Jason is a World War II and a Nazi geek, he will then take over.
Is that how you think about me?
And look at you, you're dressed in camouflage. But anyway, I also proposed this theme for our historic shows because I was very curious what he knows. You know? And if there's things that he doesn't know, then I maybe know it. But anyway, that is how it will go. First of all, I need to explain where we are. And this whole story starts at the beginning of the 18th century. Then you have Prussia as a very young monarchy. You had the first king who was really a Mel Brooks kind of king. It's good to be the king. So he was building palaces everywhere and inviting musicians, inviting artists. And at the end of his reign, the kingdom was broke. So his son thought from now, I'm not going to do that. He stopped all the buildings of the palaces. Meanwhile, he got the palace in the middle on the Museuminsel built and Charlottenburg. So he stopped it all.
And Köpenick. Yeah.
He stopped that all and he went to live in very modest circumstances, and he started to reorganize everything. And one of the reorganizations was to build a new city, because he needed people who lived here and people who would pay taxes. So they designed a grid for how would this new city look like, and that's what this made Mitte look like it is looking like now with the checkboard outline. But also part of it was the Wilhelmstraße, the Friedrichstraße, and what is now the Lindenstraße, which was the Luisenstraße. You had three places. Or the Pariser Platz, which was the square,
yeah,
and then the Leipziger Platz, which was the octagon, and then at the end of it, so these three streets going to the far point, that was what now is the Mehringplatz, and that was
Belle Alliance.
Yeah, and before that it was just the Rotonde.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was that at the south side, all the poorer people would come. So they gave him land and they gave him some money to start, and they built their houses over there. But this part over here, that was for the richer people. So all those rich guys, they came here and they built their mansions, and on some occasion it were the castles. So that was a whole Wilhelmstraße. It was lined up at the other side and on this side. But from the end of the 18th century, you got like the palace got too small for all the people who worked there. So
too many dogs.
Huh?
Frederick II had way too many dogs. Dogs driving him crazy in the palace.
The other one.
Okay.
Already his cousin. So they started to rent places over there. And at the end, all those places, they became part of the monarchy. And when the monarchy ended, it became a republic. So these became all ministries. So if you're talking about Bismarck, he was living in one of those places. Yeah? So that's how it further on developed, that this Wilhelmstraße became the street was like Downing Street number 10. If you were in power in Germany, in Berlin, you had the Wilhelmstraße. Okay? Good. So this goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
So it was in the 1730s or the 1740s is when all the governmental agencies basically leave the palace?
No, the end.
And start gravitating over
more
here?
More the 1780s, 1790s.
Okay, that's when they start gravitating towards Wilhelmstraße.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And from then on it developed into the political center of
Right.
Prussia and then Germany, of course. So the reason why we stand here is because this, which is now the North Korean embassy, yeah, North Korean embassy, because in times of Cold War, Eastern Germany was friends with North Korea because they were communists, they were the goodies, and at the other side of the border they were the baddies. So before here there was Kaiserhof, a hotel, and it was kind of logic that this hotel was here. It was the most luxurious hotel that was in Berlin, the first hotel built in 1870. The reason it was here, that everybody who mattered wanted to be close to the government.
Right.
Insurance companies. A few streets further down,
Banks.
you've got banks. Over there, you've got the press. So even if you go around there, you see a gigantic post office. But the post office was because all these people were, what do you call it, operators. They were sitting one next to each other. So that's why these post offices are gigantic. So this became one of the most luxurious hotels in Berlin. Later on you had the Esplanade and Adlon came, but Hitler came here because the owners from the 1920s were sympathizing with the Nazis. So that's why...
The Hotel Kaiserhof.
Hotel Kaiserhof. So that's why whenever he came to Berlin, he rented the first floor and he was sitting there. And now you've got a couple of very important moments in the...
Rinus, real quick, is this
Yep.
where Goering's wedding was?
Yep.
Goering's wedding was
Party.
held in here in the
Yeah.
in the
His
the
wedding was in
fucking
the dome.
Let's go to Goering's weddings, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, first it was in the Berliner Dome where the official thing took part and the
But
party,
the reception was
the
here.
party was over here.
Okay.
So one important thing in the prehistory of this, the Nazi
There you
history, I say, is when he started to get help. And the
Help in what form?
from the industrials.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because they were very, very afraid of a red revolution in Germany. So in this hotel, with the guy from the press getting these people together, Flick and so on, in this hotel they guaranteed money to Hitler that in case of a revolution he would get money to arm the SA. So that's what happened over here. So in 1932, this was his dwelling. He lived here. And in a way he was waiting that he could get into power, because the whole situation in Berlin and in the parliament was a situation of extreme chaos. Goebbels came here in 1926, which is also important to know, and his strategy he really wanted to conquer the city. His strategy was from presence and violence. So he made sure that they were marching the streets everywhere and that they were breaking in people's, when you come together, speeches, etc.
Yeah, in Moabit, Reading.
Everywhere, Neukölln. So that was a strategy. So they came to a point that that the situation in the political top with the chancellors was like, who should be in power? And they were choosing everyone, and all the time Hindenburg said, oh, no, I don't want to be with that guy, keeping Hitler out of reach. So at one point you got a chancellor and they said, oh, no, we have to outlaw the SA and the SS. That went okay for a couple of months, and then a new one came. So, and the SA and the SS became, Van Papen was the spider in the web. He thought I can be the main man and can control everything. But that went very, very much wrong. So he was trying to build all these coalitions, and Hindenburg said, no way, we have to keep that guy out. And at the end it was like SA outlawed, SS outlawed, and then SA and SS became official again. And at that point they did a kind of revolution, because Prussia was the last stronghold of the Weimar Republic, because they had an SPD president. So with this SA and SS free again, they went into Berlin for big violence. A lot of dead people, and who was to blame? The police. And who was controlling the police? The SPD of the Prussian state. So Hindenburg ordered that they would be set out of office. Goering leaped in
And becomes the
the
police
Minister
president.
of Internal Affairs. And then it goes very, very, very fast, because then already with this industrials so pushing from, listen, we have one solution only, and that is that Hitler should get into power. And that's what then happened in the 30th of January. And for Göring, the first thing to do was to establish that there was a Gestapo. And then they went nuts again, because everyone was free. And free.
Gestapo going nuts.
How would you say it?
Imagine
Free to shoot, free to live. In Holland they say bird free, vogelvrij.
Turkey shoot?
Göring, as Minister of Inner Affairs, he was also the head of police. So the SA also became the police who would help the police. And that made the things even more lethal. And then already before the fire in the Reichstag on the 27th of February, so this whole 4 weeks after the installment on the 30th of January, with a massive crowd here, a massive crowd cheering, and then the torch march going under the Brandenburger Tor, and also past the balcony over there, which we will point out later. But anyway, free as a bird. In that month to come, people were free as a bird. So they would arrest them, they would beat them up, they would demolish the houses, like George Gross, the artist. They went into his house in Dahlem, but fortunately he was not there. But nevertheless, they smashed everything. But you talk about the tunnel, and this whole story about the Reichstag fire was already a little bit fishy when the actual process was going on, because you had experts of the fire brigade who said, those curtains and with matches you can never get that on fire. But they needed this scapegoat, and he was alone, and he was so helpful to tell them I was the only one, and I wanted to provoke a communist uprising. But you have to keep in mind that what he said was written down by the police, and the head of the police was Göring. So whatever he said, you can never be sure if that were the actual words. They kept this myth until, of course, the whole Nazi period, but also after the Second World War, they kept this myth going. And because after the Second World War, everybody was washing the other ones. You had the personal papers from who was a good Nazi. Well, I was a good Nazi, no? You tell me I was a good Nazi. So everyone was telling them they were already used to standing like that, no? So in Holland they say we keep a head above somebody else's head. So that's what they did. You help somebody else by keeping your hand up over somebody else's head. And that's how all these Nazis came back into the official positions. Judges, politicians, local government, police, everywhere. If after the war this story of the fire, the Reichstag fire, would be told in the way as it was, then a lot of uniforms would be falling out of the cupboards. So they kept it under the blanket. And it's only this century that you've got a professor, Mr. Head, with double T, and he went like researching everything, and it's almost like archaeology. You put all the pieces together, but you don't have the ultimate proof. And all those pieces together, they say there was a tunnel, there were experienced pyromaniacs, and apparently...
But Göring did that, right?
They don't know, but it's all like high shots that were there. And Göring being in touch with the Gestapo, that made the whole thing very plausible. So they apparently, if you have clots and it's drained in a phosphorescent substance, you put it somewhere, you create heat, and then you got this massive fire of 1,000 degrees, which made the whole parliament.
The building went up.
Yeah, but where the parliament was housed. So that became a big wood fire. And that was the thing for he said, okay, I'm the boss, and on it went. Then things started over here, and maybe we should leave the Hotel Kaiserhof because he doesn't need it anymore, because he's got the chancellery over there at the other side of the street.
Right. So you guys, just real quick, we need to bear in mind, Hitler moves from the Hotel Kaiserhof into what I always call the Bismarck Palast. It's that palace over here, which is one of 2 or 3 along the Wilhelmstrasse, where in the 19th century, Bismarck hosted the Congo Conference, where all of the powerhouses of Europe got together and decided how the colonial west of the world is going to be divvied up. And he also hosted another conference there. I don't really get why this happened, but he was like helping out the Austrians, the Serbs and the Montenegrins and the Croatians, like helping out with like Balkan stuff. But it was over here at the, it was over here. That was the old chancellery. And that was actually the building that Hitler moved into and lived in up until 1944. Yeah. So actually Hitler had an address, he had a house, you know. He wasn't just like in a tank or like running around with an SS division or something like that, yeah? Okay, well in 39 is when, if I'm not mistaken, is when Speer builds the Reichstag, like lickety split, man. He gets that thing built real fast, right? Uh-oh, Congo. Okay, anyway, so here's an important question and something I've always scratched my head about. Rudolf Hess, whose offices we're gonna see in a second, what was his job description? What did he actually do? He was Hitler's deputy, but what does it even mean to be Hitler's deputy? What do you do? What do you do?
Well,
just have shiny boots and like brown uniforms all the time?
And Mein Kampf when he was in prison.
Okay, well that was before anything even started happening. So this, all right, you guys over here, this would have been where Goebbels' propaganda ministry was. That is the only original wall of the propaganda ministry.
If we
right, so Hitler's balcony would have been
at the Apotheke, which you don't see, but you see it from there.
Okay. For our purposes here, you guys, all we need to know is that is where Hitler lived. He lived in the former Bismarck Palace, okay, up until 1944. And then when the air war over Berlin starts to gain momentum, that's when he will work in the office, but he will not spend the night in the palace. He'll spend the night in the bunker, okay? And you guys already in the bunker, he's terrified because the bunker is built right down amidst the water table. We all know this, right? Berlin's built on a swamp, okay? So the water table is like 7-8 meters underneath us. The bunker was built literally in the midst of this water table. The German firm Hochbau AG, what were they called? I can't remember those guys. Hochbau. They didn't actually manage. They were told to get the bunker just like going as lickety split as fast as they could possibly do it, right? Because the bombing campaign was accelerating, right? So one thing they didn't do is they weren't able to actually create a wall that was not permeable to water. Now I don't know if this is true, but for that reason, Hitler always had his bed in his offices next to the far wall, as if that was ever going to do anything, okay? In case he was always terrified that a British or American bomb would detonate or somehow get in the soil and detonate and collapse one of the walls of the bunker with all the water coming in, and then he'd die like a U-boat death, yeah? All right, guys, follow me, please. Here we go.
But there's one thing.
Gentlemen, please.
Hold on. There's one thing. There's one thing that you should know, because that also that belongs to the whole history of the Neue Reichskanzlei, so the new chancellery. So you had this rather farmerish building, you know, with this roofs like that looked like a saddle, and then you've got here, all in this bombastic style, the villa of Mr. Borzig. And Borzig was one of the very, very heavy Jews over here. So all the wrought iron was made in his factories, all the locomotives were built in his factories. So he had one big building over here. The extension of the chancellery, and this was in 1934, was from what Jason calls the Bismarck mansion. So they connected it with the Borzig Palace, and it's already that this extension was a bit like a study what Speer would build later on. So this very smooth surface with windows, and what they needed immediately when Hitler came into power was a balcony to say, well, hello, but they didn't stand like that. And as I said, that's above the apotheke over there. So that was the exact place. Also, the golden years of Nazism, that was when everything went well, when they conquered France, when they were in Paris, looking from the Trocadero, looking at the Eiffel Tower, and then they came back from it's like Germany world champion again, no? So he came in his, he arrived on Anhalter Bahnhof. Also explains Potsdamer Platz, Potsdamer Bahnhof, and Anhalter Bahnhof, because this was the center of Berlin. This was the important center of Berlin. And Anhalter Bahnhof is go down, go to the right, and there's Anhalter Bahnhof. So there he arrived from Paris. They loaded him into an open Mercedes, and then all the streets were completely filled with people. So one backing up to the other, all going to the Mercedes, and then where there is the finest Asian cuisine. Mm-hmm. So that's more or less was the entrance where they got in, so that they could also stand on the balcony.
Wait, to the balcony or to the Ehrenhof?
Go into the Ehrenhof and then go to the balcony. So
okay.
Once again, to have an impression, to have an idea of what you're looking at here, the Czech embassy, this was open. This was part of the Wilhelmplatz. That was a way also part of the Wilhelmplatz. Before it was really like garden-like, you know, for trees and a fountain and things like that, and a proper entrance to the Hotel Kaiserhof U-Bahn stop. And Speer said, no, people stumble, this has to go all the way, this has to go down, because people have to gather here. And that's how it became like an open space.
Guys, follow me, please. Okay, everyone. So, standing here, if you look down this way, can you see that bright, almost like paper clean facade right there? That is what is left of the original propaganda ministry, right?
Yeah, and the backside, what you were referring to, because it's the same style.
Yeah. This was Goebbels' propaganda ministry, okay? Let's walk down here, please. Normally, everyone, I would keep you out of the glaring sun because it's glaring sun, but because winter's right around the corner, we need to get all the vitamin D we can right now, right? Okay, guys, so we are walking towards the Hannah Arendt Strasse, which did not exist way back then. But you guys, even as we approach, can you see this sort of like Baroque balcony with the German federal flag and the EU flag flying? The stately building here. I'm coming back to my question from yesterday. You guys, this was like Rudolf Hess's office. What was Rudolf Hess's job? I mean, he was.
I think he was an old friend.
What did he even do?
He was an old friend.
He needs an office. He needs an office like that. What did he? Just shines his boots and like steam presses his brown uniforms every day.
They need four to play cards.
Okay, guys. So literally, this building right here, this was Rudolf Hess's office. Now, what in the world Rudolf Hess had to do there every day? I really have no idea. After the Nazis came to power, the Führer's deputy Rudolf Hess and his staff in the building of their Berlin office. His function was to monitor whether laws and public appointments were in line with, okay, all right, okay. I guess I'd keep you busy, right?
Yeah.
Making sure laws were Nazi enough, okay?
Yeah.
Seriously, Hess, if I'm not mistaken, was also a World War I. Was he also a fighter pilot?
No. He learned to fly the ME-110 purely to get to Scotland. He took lessons, only so he could fly it alone to Scotland to talk to whoever it was.
Okay, I believe it, but I thought that actually he had been also as well, kind of like George Papard in the Blue Max. You guys remember that one? You guys are too young to remember that war movie.
My dad used to love that.
I love, my dad would literally hold me down and make me watch that film. All right, guys, so we're standing here in the corner of Honea Strasse. Everyone, way back in the day, the Honea Strasse, nor did the Kolonnade exist. These are all post-war constructions, okay? Which means from Pariserplatz, the Wilhelmstrasse, all the way down to the Wallstrasse, were governmental agencies and buildings. Now over here, you guys, we had the Reichs Agrikultur- und Siedlungsbüro.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Blut and Boden Ministry.
Blut and Boden. This is where this term comes from. I can't remember the name of the guy. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But anyway, this is where his offices were. And prior to that, this is where the Reichspräsident's office was. Okay, the Reichspräsident's office is right here, you guys. So the Reichspräsident's office, starting already in I think 35 or 36. But then all of this. So at some point, Hitler amalgates the Reichspräsident and Chancellor into one office. Okay. So now all of these buildings, like Ribbentrop just like gets them. He just goes, overnight, he just like gets them, okay? Actually, you know what? This is super fun, Rinus. So you guys, a couple of nights ago when Rinus and Adrian and I were talking about this tour, we were all, or at least I was chuckling, how many tour guides and how many tour companies tell you differently where what is, yeah? And it finally took the dudes, those kooks from the Berlin Unterwelten, to actually offer a real diagram to figure out where everything actually really was. In a second, everyone, we're going to look at a map, what I think only contributes to this confusion. Okay? Let's go this way.
So back to this mosaic hall or the marble hall. Anselm Kiefer, if that rings a bell, he made a tremendous picture of that one.
Right.
That's a really, really good. But that was one of the pictures when already everything was tumbled down. So what you had there was red marble, and a glass roof. So that's all. From the red marble, there's also a kind of maybe misunderstanding or a myth or something that they don't want you to know or don't want you to tell. Who came on the U-Bahn and get out on Mohrenstraße? but doesn't it look like, well, yeah, blood sausage from inside? It really is like, whoa! So it makes you, it's too much. The original reading is that they went to Thuringen to get the marble from that thing.
Graham might know about that.
And the most normal thing was because the chancellery was bombed, but it was not destroyed. It took up to 1955 to tear it down completely. Because
50.
Yeah, but because they could use everything that was there, the big granite humps and also the marble. And what is more logic that you take the marble, you cross the street and you go down and you put it against the wall in that U-Bahn station.
But I thought that was bullshit.
But nobody wants it. Nobody wants to know from. No, it's not like that. It went to what was Stalin?
Crypto, the Soviet. The
Yeah,
Soviet.
but not only that, a library in what's the name of Stalingrad now? Yeah, so a library over there. They took the red marble. Bit of it was at the Soviet Memorial in
It really was.
Straße 17 June, and also most of all the granite. The granite went also to the Tier Park in East Berlin.
Right, okay.
So that's how they dismantled it. There's one exhibition in the Kupferstich cabinet, and there they give the room to a curator. And the theme there was, what do we have in our archive that we can show her? And there was one thing there, that one little painting from the 19th century showing the Leipziger Platz. All very Sunday and ladies with parasols. And if you look at it, and down in the right corner, it says like from Reichschancellery, and then a date in August 1945. So April, he killed himself. Then the Allies were here, May, June, July and August. So in August it must have been possible to enter here as a soldier and say, well, I like this picture and I take it with me, because they found it in an antique store somewhere in England. And that's how it came back there. So they tell the whole story of that thing. The most idiot thing, and that maybe explains a little bit the fascination with Hitler. You look at it, and the picture is there, and you know that his nose was also at this distance at some time. No, 1 meter away from that picture. That's such a weird experience. But okay, but that's one little side note. I left you at the Marble Hall. And he didn't like to be there. All the people who went by, they were told to have only the people with rubber soles. Because at that time they had iron under the soles, or they had wooden soles, and he went berserk on this clack, 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 clack outside on it.
Crazy, yeah.
To finish the story here, one more thing. Underneath here were bunkers.
Yeah.
So that somehow, if they're still accessible, they have to dig a hole.
And then, you guys, over here on the far end, what is now Ebertstrasse, which back in the day used to be the Hermann Göring Strasse, okay? This is where the SS motor pool was. They had a bunker there as well too. And it's from that motor pool where those guys got the fuel to douse Adolf and Eva and the Goebbels and like try to torch him. So you guys, in 36 and 38, the old Kanzlei, those guys then build a bunker. In 1939, the construction of the new Kanzlei commences. And as soon as Hitler realizes where Allied bomb technology is at, that's when all of a sudden he orders in the spring of 1944 that a new bunker be built right here. So between April of 44 and August of 44 is when the Führerbunker, the Hitler bunker, is built. And it directly adjoins the old bunker by a series like 3 or 4 steps, okay? And it would be essentially right here, okay? Now this was under the Chancellery Gardens, you guys, okay? So if you've seen those famous pictures, everybody erroneously says it's like Hitler's birthday, like it's April 20th of 1945. Actually, this image was, this film was shot on March 20th of 1945, where Hitler's awarding those Hitler Youth Boys their decorations. That would have been happening right over here, where this line of cars is. That would have been right there. And then directly behind that is where that ornamental pond was. And if I'm not mistaken, those big iron horses, one of which is in the Festung at Spandau, they would have been over there as well too? Or
On the terrace.
The terrace would have been over here.
Yep.
So you guys, just like a time thing. All right, 1944, I think we all should know. Fucked up year for Nazi Germany, right? The Allies are already in Sicily and Italy. June, they land in France. 2 weeks after that, Rokossovsky punches through the German middle on the Eastern Front, thus collapsing it. Now that means for the Germans, it's a headlong retreat back to Berlin via Minsk and Warsaw. The war's end is on the horizon, but nobody really knows quite when it's gonna stand. Next thing you know, the Americans, the Canadians, and the British are completely overextended in Belgium with like snow up to here, okay? And holy shit, boys and girls, what's happening next? Now the Germans south of Aachen are building up panzer armies and battle groups and all kinds of crap. What are those guys gonna fucking do now? What they wanted to do is like romp across Belgium, take Antwerp, and prevent Antwerp from serving as a supply hub directly over the channel from England. Prior to that point in time, we all had been like supplying our dudes by, you know, sending stuff to Normandy, and then from Normandy up through northern France through Belgium. It makes logistic sense, absolutely. The Germans completely understood this, and that's why they launched this Ardennes offensive. Hitler, if I'm not mistaken, together with Goebbels and Keitel and all those dudes, were observing this entire thing from a bunker in Luxembourg? I might be wrong. If you guys can chip in, help me out here, okay? But once they realize that whole thing has gone south, Hitler then jumps on a train, and January 16th of 1945, he arrives in Berlin. And it's from that point that those guys disappeared down into the bunker, and from there lead the German war effort, okay? Now, we gotta bear in mind that this thing was actually still pretty new. I mean, it was built between April and August of 1944. As I mentioned, it's about, well, almost 50 feet down below us. Hochbau AG, or whatever they're called, that they didn't properly, well, of course they properly built it, but they didn't actually build water barriers, because the bunker basically sits in the water table, okay? They thought they were going to compensate for that by developing a bunch of pumps that would just like run around the hour. Hitler hated the sound of those pumps too. He hated the sound of that too.
And it was humid all the time.
It was humid all the time in there, and that's why you always had like sweaty walls. You guys ever go to like punk gigs where like the walls are being sweating and shit like that? It's kind of like this, okay? The air was completely stale. And it was like hyper lighted. It was like just bulb light all over the place, just like so bright you just like squint all the time when you were down there, right? So you've got all this like super hyper crazy light with all these watery walls. He actually said that you could see puddles of water forming at the base of the walls, right? Because the water was
There's
actually...
one more detail, because he had a very bad smell from his mouth, and he was extremely flatulent. So that adds up to the local odor. Yeah. So shouting, and everybody's, oh, get the stench off my face.
Right, hey, yeah, halitosis, right? He had horrible halitosis and bad farts. Yeah. Apparently Donald Trump does too. Anyway.
Bad farts?
Okay, so, all right guys, so on the 28th to the 29th of April, 1945, Adolf and Eva marry.
We go to the actual spot.
Come on. Let's go to the actual spot. hold, we can't go down there. We can't go down there. It's all completely
No,
sealed
no,
off.
no. We
You
go
wanna
stand
gear up?
8.5 meters
Reenacting?
over it.
You want to reenact it? Man, dude, you think you have stress in your life? imagine being down there with the Red Army just like trying to hammer you. The Royal Air Force and the American U.S. Army Air Force like pounding you. You're responsible for the deaths of how many people? You're so high as a kite, you don't even know what in the world to do. You're just like going in circles, just like sitting down there. Oh my God, it must have been terrifying. Yeah.
Don't go away. The layout of the bunker was pretty simple. It was all rooms of 3 by 4 meters, and there were 2 central spaces that could also be
meeting.
like a kind of corridor. So you could enter from that way, where there was a little hallway. You go down, past the guards, and then in the middle, I put it like schematic. It's not the real location here, but in the middle there was a hall, and there was a door. Also a guard to get at the other side, and also a corridor like that. From there you could go up to the small bunker that was over there. The doors could be closed because hermetically.
Airlock.
Because they were afraid of gas attacks.
Gas, yeah.
And at either side of those corridors there were little rooms. There was machine room, there was toilets, there was
The medical room.
Yeah, over there, the doctor, Eva Braun with her own room, shower for
The Goebbels were down there.
Goebbels were 2 rooms over there. There was the guy who did the telephone thing.
Mich Ruppes. Yeah.
Yeah, he went on to live like last year or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, but more or less precisely here is his private room.
So this is about
space.
here is where he would have shot himself.
Yeah.
Underneath us, right here.
Yeah. There's 2 readings. One is that they say that a part of the deck is still there, so that the space underneath it is also still open. And the other reading is no, the rubble is right up to the floor. And when this happened was when they built this, and this is 1988. Okay. Then they had a very big gravel pit where they could do things with time. And what you have is like underneath there, 18 meters, 4 meters wide, 20 meters, 4 meters wide, and 18 meters, 4 meters wide. That's what's left of it, plus the floor.
So in the late 80s is when they filled it up with all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could still see the deck and things like that. Wow. But that is 45, 46, 47. Because the Soviets, they put ammunition in it and then tried to blow it up so that all the walls in between it, they disappeared and you got one big space. And they left it like that. The DDR, they went here because they thought, oh, maybe we can find some tunnels, but they didn't find them. Yeah. And then this made an end to it.
Okay guys, so Pink Floyd, 1997, 98, did a concert over here. Tear down the wall, tear down the wall. And while preparing for the concert, clink, 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 they began digging. Of course, they naturally came across the bunker. And it's my understanding that that is for the first time since the late 80s that someone actually went into the bunker. Now, I don't recall, you might be right, but I don't recall everything being full of debris. It was full of water. They had to pump water out of it. They had to pump a ton of water out of it. But for the most part, I mean, there's nothing down there except a bunch of signage.
Yeah.
And there were these famous images from the SS nursery showing a bunch of little like blonde kids sitting in the grass playing with like bunny rabbits. Surrounded by like SS men with like shields who are like protecting them from like Stars of David and like hammers and sickles and stuff like that. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Yeah, that was down here. Now I don't know if that stuff is all still there, But I'm wondering about the rooms being filled up with gravel and shit like that. And then the pictures that from the early 90s where they had to pump all the water out, that for sure. But they're just like walking around in there like there was nothing down there. Okay, guys, so the bunker. I think it was right here that where Adrian's standing. This is where Hammer and Fegelein got executed.
You have to go on the sidewalk because
they just walked him right outside the fucking door, dude. They just shot him. So
in the bunker or outside?
Outside.
Yeah, that's from the sidewalk almost.
So he probably would have been shot right here, right literally here. Okay. Fegelein was Eva Braun's sister's husband, and he was Himmler's adjutant. And he was also together with like Gustav Lombard, like one of the main movers and shakers in the SS cavalry brigades divisions who were responsible for all kinds of murderous activity in Belarus and Ukraine. And he was like this like alcoholic party boy who just screwed anything.
And why did they shoot him?
Okay, so all of a sudden Himmler wasn't in the bunker anymore, all right? Because Himmler was trying to get in touch with the Swedes and the Western Allies, trying to broker his own little personal peace, okay? But those guys were so high and so stressed out in the bunker, they didn't realize that Himmler was gone, okay? So all of a sudden, they hear on the BBC, Bormann hears on the BBC broadcast that Heinrich Himmler all of a sudden is trying to broker a deal with the Western Allies. And like they go looking through the bunker, where is he? He said, well, he's not here because he's brokering a deal with the Allies. At that point, Hitler has a massive meltdown and then goes, where's Fegelein? Did you see the Untergang, the bunker? Fegelein, where's Fegelein? You know, this slide, he's like banging on the table. Well, Hermann Fegelein was at his little apartment having tons of sex with some young woman. Changing into civilian clothes and with a suitcase full of all kinds of like foreign currency, getting ready to ditch. And he gets picked up by a bunch of SS guys. They go, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? So they escort him back. They make him get back into uniform. They bring him back over to the bunker. He's made to sit on a stool. And it's this kangaroo court. Who was it? Was it Monka? One of those guys. They just like tried him right there and said, dude, you've had it. And so they basically they tried him and they made him take off all of his own insignia and decorations and stuff like that and throw it in a pile. And they, right here, they just gunned him down. That was the end of Hermann Fegelein. All right, guys. Okay, so from the 28th to 29th, Hitler basically puts down his legacy and testament. He and Eva Braun marry, okay? And then I'm not really sure if anything happened that night, like if they had like hot sex or anything like that. I think Hitler was just like too stressed out, like poring over maps and wondering if he was going to be... Despite the halitosis and everything else, right? And then on the next day, on the 30th, Adolf and Eva shoot themselves, okay? Their bodies were hauled roughly over here to where this intersection is, and here the SS dudes doused them with gasoline and tried to torch him. you need more than a couple of liters of gasoline to like actually properly cremate a human body, right? But what essentially starts happening then, you guys, is then this like suicide orgy breaks out in the bunker. The Goebbels start killing their kids. Krebs and Bergdorf shoot each other. Goebbels and Magda walk themselves. Yeah, it's a suicide madness just like fucking going on down there. And you're just supposed to be sitting there like, answering the phone and looking at the papers and like stamping things, making sure there's enough ammunition coming in, stuff like that. So that's what starts happening. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Helmut Weidling, the commandant for Berlin, this old Knight's Cross wearing older, I say older, he was in his 40s, artillery general who basically Hitler appointed to being the commandant of Berlin. Not the commandant of the bunker, that was Monke, but the commandant of Berlin. And after that shit goes down, the Weidling just says, all right, guys, this is it. We're breaking out. This is it, this is it, this is it. Start preparing, okay? And I think they broke out, what, about 11:30 at night? Is that what, about 11:30 at night is when they broke out? They broke out in 3 different waves with those guys, I guess, I don't know what they're coming up here and then running over here to the Mohnstrasse U-Bahn. That would have been Monke's group, the first group, okay? And if I'm not mistaken, that might have been also Bormann. Was he in the first group?
He got out. He got out. S-Bahn to the main station.
Okay, so the 28th to 29th of April, Adolf and Eva marry, and Hitler lays down his testament. The next day, the 30th, he kills himself, okay? Now, from the point that he kills himself, however many hours that was, into May 1st, and May 1st is when the Goebbels start killing their kids. It's when Krebs and Bergdorf blow their heads off. It's when Magda and Josef shoot themselves. I mean, like I said, it was like a suicide orgy, man, which is fucking gross. Could you imagine being down there, like, hanging out with a bunch of people who were just like waiting to commit suicide? It would have been absolutely horrifying, horrifying. Now, what planes out?
The
So
27th,
by April 19th, the
airplane.
Soviets have pretty much surrounded Berlin. And if it's not the 19th, it's the 20th, Hitler's birthday, where they take Henningsdorf. When they take Henningsdorf to the northwest of us, then serves as a space where they can now jump down towards Potsdam. And once they start doing that, Berlin is completely surrounded. To my knowledge, if I remember correctly, Felix Steiner and his 3rd Germanisches Panzerkorps was, and this is where Hitler was like, where's Steiner? He's like yelling, right? And I think it was on the 21st that Steiner was supposed to actually like do it, and Steiner said, no, man, it ain't happening. It's just not going to work. So the 21st. So I assume up to that point in time, they probably could have still been flying planes in.
No, there was this one plane that landed on the 27th.
Landed
Yeah,
here
in front of the Brandenburger Gate.
On Main Street.
Because the Reichstag battle that must have started on 28 or 29.
Dude, you think you got
and it
stressed?
lasted for 3 days.
News coming in. Tell us.
Well, just what I've read recently, and it seems like a legitimate account, is that the fragment of Hitler's skull in Moscow is actually not his skull. They've determined that this belongs to a woman. We don't have Hitler's remains.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even.
So that's why I'm asking. I don't want to sound like all goofy and stuff, but I mean, is it theoretically possible that he could have, absconded and gotten out of Berlin? Because we actually do not have his remains, and the stuff that I've read about is that the stuff about the bodies being burned, those are decoys. Those are not his body. Those are not the bodies of Hitler.
How, we don't.
We know this actually.
Do we?
Yeah.
I've read one thing because those bodies they were like buried 8 times in 1 year, and there was generals who wanted to see it, and one of those generals stated in 1961 you could still recognize him, that it was him. But this is a very fickle point maybe. The English people they came with this historian Hugh Trevor Rope, and he used this one method of asking a lot of people. And he tried to interview also the people of the first ring, so who were actually there. So they had the experience from first hand. And then you've got the people who have got the experience from second hand because they heard the story. He found a lot of people from that second ring. And then finally they found someone from the first one. And it all came down to the cyanide, the bullet, and the burning. But I always think that's what you need. Because after 1945 you need a history like a blank piece of paper, and you can't use a Hitler walking around
down
there.
Man?
Because
why wasn't it him? Of course
because
it was him.
No, because with that point,
you know,
that era ended. And of course, there's also the stories in South America. Everyone believes that he made it.
You guys, on one of my tours a couple of weeks ago, this lady came out and said, "Look, Mossad, okay, the Israeli Secret Service, man, they got fucking Franz Stangl, they got Adolf Eichmann, they got all of these dudes. There's nothing in the world would ever prevented them from finding Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was dead, dead, dead. He was burned up right there, right there. He's completely dead. Why do you even need to hold on to that crap?"
There's
My
one
cousin,
escape route.
He's got all these books, and every Thanksgiving he's got to haul these books out. We have to sit at the table and like do whiskey shots. He goes on about how Hitler's actually still in buried in a mausoleum and somewhere in Brazil. I mean, whatever. Why do you even need to believe that? Yeah. You know how this shit started? June 6th, Zhukov, Marshal Zhukov said,
also Stalin.
We cannot actually 100% prove that those are the remains of Adolf Hitler. And then a couple of weeks after that, Stalin came out and made some statement too, and that's how all the shit got started.
Yeah,
that's exactly how it all got started.
That's immediately at Potsdam where they asked Stalin, "Did you find him?" And he said, "Well, no." And they asked Zhukov as well, so no.
Okay, guys. So on a stupid side note, let me just say this before we move on to our final stop. Okay. So is everybody here familiar with Wilhelm Mohnke? Yeah, Mohnke was the bunker commandant, but he was an old LAH personality, also a kook and a psychopath, responsible for horrible stuff. Anyway, he said he himself did not ever publish a book, but his best friend in the LAH artillery had a grandson, and this grandson was able to interview Mohnke before he died. And one of the things that Mohnke said in this book, and I actually believe it, he goes, all of this bullshit about Bormann and Hitler still being alive, they're not alive, man. They're dead, dead, dead. He goes, I saw Martin Bormann lying in the street. I saw him lying in the street, dead as a doornail. He's completely gone. Stop going round and round about this nonsense, man. It's over. All those guys are completely over.
Even if they did.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? But anyway, I mean, Mohnke in this book, you don't have to believe it, but I kind of he goes, all of this post-war nonsense, man. He said this, it's just like this delicious, like gibberish gossip. No, man, Martin Bormann is dead. He's dead, dead, dead. I saw him dead lying there, coming from Wilhelm Mohnke, all right?
If you want to find a nice picture, you have to look up Hitler and Philip Citroen. Citroen is Citron. If you look that up, that's a little report that was in the CIA archives, and after a couple of years they liberated it. It's open to the public. It's only one thing. From Philip Citroen finds this guy Adolf Hitler somewhere in Colombia. I think the year is 1953 or 1945, 54 I mean, but it has no follow-up. It's only the picture, Hitler sitting on a chair, a wooden chair outside the bar. He said, I found him here.
Well, and there's a guy who looks just like Hitler with his mustache.
Wait, hang on. I found him here. There's a German colony. They still call him Mein Führer. And Hitler is sitting on this chair in burger,
L. Ron Hubbard.
civilian clothes.
Dude, he lived.
and Philip Citron, he's standing next to him. But you look at the picture and you think from the whole world is looking for you, is trying to find you, and you still have this haircut. You know? How? But also Hitler was not a big guy. But the guy in that chair, if he gets up, he must be like 190. That's
You guys,
so that's why it didn't get a follow-up.
no bullshit. When this formal stuff started coming out in the mid-60s and late 60s, that in fact Adolf was still alive, you guys, Anwar Sadat of Egypt, who later became friends with the Israelis, right, published this op-ed in the big Cairo newspaper going, "Mein Führer, so beautiful and wonderful that you have survived. You in the end are the victor," you know, stuff like that, yeah. And then later becomes friends with the Israelis. Oh my God.
That's the exact spot where he was burned.
Right, so, yeah, we got to mention that. So you guys, it's roughly here, this intersection, where not only Adolf and Eva, but also the Goebbels, Magda and Josef Goebbels were burned here as well too, okay? And then, my understanding is that the body is sort of laid this way with their heads sort of facing over there. And then over here by that no parking sign, this is where Blondie and the German Shepherds, their corpses were just like tossed in the hole too. Do you remember that? They actually tested the cyanide on the dogs first. Little Blondie.
Yeah, Hitler didn't trust
Blondie
it.
and Magda's dog, what was that? That black terrier? I can't remember the name of the black terrier. Why I didn't even know the name of Hitler's dog. Why I still use neutrons to hold this knowledge in place. I don't really know why. Okay. But anyway, so Hitler, okay, I'm not sure this is actually true, but Hitler was terrified that the SAS, the British Secret Service, had somehow permeated what was happening and had swapped out that cyanide with fake cyanide, so that he would take what he thought was cyanide, and then all of a sudden he'd wake up and be in the, you know, in London or in Washington or in Moscow, Lord forbid, interrogation chamber, right?
Yeah.
So to make sure that it was the real shit, he tested it on the dogs first.
Yeah, dangling by his feet at a gas station.
Actually, no.
Oh, that was the other thing, dude. That was the other thing. We forgot to mention that at some point. I'm not sure if it was on the 28th or the 29th. It might have been the 27th. News arrives in Berlin that Mussolini has been murdered, and he's strung up by his boot heels together with like 4 other boys and his mistress, and everyone's like throwing their own shit and rocks and bottles and all kinds of stuff at it, and he goes, well, I'm not going to end up like that. And that's why I said, you guys got to cremate me. That's why I said it. So you guys, the SS motor pool was back over this way. So those big trees over here beyond us, this is the Tiergarten. This is the, you know, the big Berlin City Park. Okay, but just on the, that's the Ebertstrasse over there. You guys, back in the day, this used to be the Hermann Göring Strasse. Okay, and just right there where these German federal buildings are, this is where the SS motor pool was. There was a bunker there as well too. Now, if we go over this way, you guys, here, okay, we're still in the former Chancellery Gardens. Okay, and about right over here where this empty space is where that famous image, okay, of all those Hitler Youth boys in their black uniforms fucking lined up, is about right here. And you see Hitler just like completely freaked out, like just coming down, right? Who's behind him? Fegelein, Otto Axmann, the Hitler Youth leader, is with his wooden arm, right? Ironically, the only guy who successfully got away Otto Axmann, right? Didn't he have a wooden foot and he had a fake arm? I was telling the story the other day and one of my guests goes, because he had wooden appendages. He was getting hit in the wooden appendages. That's why he got away, okay? Anyway, so that stuff, you guys, was right here. Now, something that's really important to point out about that particular event is that when you look at it in books or if you read about it or if you see it like on YouTube and stuff like that, people erroneously record that as being Hitler's birthday, April 20th of 1945. That's not Hitler's birthday. That's a month before. That's March 20th, not April 20th, March 20th of 1945. That's when he's awarding those guys. And I don't know, I mean, Salo hadn't even broken out by then. So maybe these were kids who were trucked in from like Breslau or somewhere. I can't figure out where those kids would have come from. But anyway, that's March 20th. So that would have been right here. Now you guys, a big, huge question that Rinus and I have. Everybody follow us this way. So you guys, these are all German federal offices, okay? This would have been where the chancellery was, and probably about over here beyond these pine trees, or right here, is where Hitler's office would have been, right?
Yeah.
So his office would have been right here, and he had a view out the window to the chancellery gardens. So he would have looked at the gardens all the time, okay? One of the stupidest SS uniforms I've ever seen was the chancellery uniform, where they actually had guys in breeches with like knee socks, and I think he had them in white wigs and stuff. They were supposed to look like Versailles. What's the place in Potsdam called again? Sanssouci. Yeah. They're supposed to look like, 18th century servants, and literally like in pantaloons and knee socks.
That was a drink container as well.
So you guys, while we're still here, I'm not sure if you can see it now because there's someone just rudely started standing in the way. So that would be the Wilhelmstrasse and the Woststrasse. From that corner, all the way up to that set of red lights over there, this would have been the Woststrasse, this would have been the Kanzlei. This would have been where his offices were, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, we assume, that his offices are roughly here, but he didn't have a view out to this street, actually he had a view into the Chancellery Gardens. The big question we're answering, everyone, why after all these years, in the middle of Berlin, in the government district, okay, with property being hot, why is this still vacant? Rinus?
Yeah.
Why is it still vacant? Because there's a big ass bunker underneath it.
Do we see a sign, all who enter this precinct will be shot? Yeah. So, Berlin is a flat city. So everything is level. You've got Prenzlauer Berg, which was one side of the big riverbed, and you've got Kreuzberg, which is the other hillside. But for the rest, it was flat. Everything above street level, you can cut your wrist on it. There's rubble under it. So if there's something under it, it must be the remains of the Neue Reichskanzlei. And because the Hitler's office was over there, my only guess is that they left this unbuilt because at some point maybe they want to lay it bare and you go into the bunkers. That's my only guess. Because
so which bunkers were these?
These are the bunkers under the Reichskanzlei. So this is one for me one of the big question marks in Berlin. Empty spaces where you can have a hint of a history. I find the most intriguing.
Also, just real quick, guys, if you are into this bunker shit, the Berlin Unterwelten, my buddy Peter Graham, who I'm doing these World War II things with, okay, they just 2 weeks ago did the Dresdner Strasse World War II bunker. They did that one. Said it was great. And apparently now, if I understood correctly, I'm not sure if it's a tour yet, but they're actually getting into the Friedrichshain bunker. Wow.
Are we rounding this off?
Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah. Okay.
It's supposed to be only be 20 minutes.
One thing to bring this whole story to present day kleptocrats. Speer, when he built this, he became a multimillionaire. He earned if you calculate to now, 40 million euro. Building this.
Designing it.
Okay, well here present on what might be some of the rubble of the Neue Reichschancellerie, standing with the people who have followed this tour. Thank you for following us on this tour. And also you back home, thanks for listening. You've been listening to Hitler's Walk with Jason Honea explaining everything. Me, myself, also explaining a lot of things. Rinus Van Alebeek and Adrian Shephard walking silently with us. And he's recording everything, and this will be edited and coming to your ears right now.
Hey guys, I'm Jason Honea. I am the shitty listener, aka Boy True, and you've been listening to Radio on Berlin. Woo! Whoop!
You have been listening to Radio on Berlin. Yeah!
All right, I'm tired of being responsible. Let's go get beer. Beer! Let's get beer! I know exactly where we're going. Come on.